My name's Darren Reid from Ballarat. This build here is the RMS Carpathia. It's representing the 4 o'clock arrival of the ship about 2 hours after the Titanic had sunk, when they started to pick up the lifeboats with the surviving passengers before they returned to New York. The build took about 3 months roughly of planning, probably about 2 weeks of building and maybe 2 days of swearing at it. We've got a cat that likes knocking masts down. I tried a few different things that I've not tried before. There's a little bit of brick bending in it, a lot of just standard building techniques, and 1 or 2 things that I've done in the past with some steampunk ships where I've got plates and certain parts of the ship actually upside down so that they just are resting on one another, so you can use normal parts inverted. On the whole, I wanted to have a go at it because there'd been a number of Titanic builds over the last couple of years, both here and at other conventions that I've been to, and I just thought it'd be a lot of fun to try and do the Carpathia, which has always been a favourite bit of the story of the Titanic thing that I don't think a lot of people really know much about.
It's kind of lost in the story of the Titanic.
Yeah. And I've seen a lot of older movies where they've shown scenes relating to what was going on the Carpathia when the actual SOS happened. And I've always found the whole thing, including the life of the captain who was in charge of the ship on the night, quite interesting, and thought I'd have a go at it. And surprisingly enough, at this particular event, and I didn't know it at the time, a young 8-year-old has gone and built a Titanic on the opposite side of the floor. And there's a bit of a running joke that I'm supposed to start pushing this towards them and trying to save him.
It slowly moves across the convention.
Yeah, but I have a distinct feeling I'm not going to get there in time. Somebody told me he's already going down.
So when you started working on this, as far as like source material, were you looking at photos of the ship, or what kind of stuff did you have to base it off of?
I had a number of historical, basically a lot of books that I've got on the subject, including the one that I've tended to read the most, which was The Night to Remember, which I've always been a fan of the original movie from the 1950s, which is where I got interested about the Carpathia, because it was the first film that I think they did on the Titanic that I can remember, where they actually had scenes relating to the actual Carpathia and its crew and what was happening. But I spent a lot of time looking at artwork that people had done of the same time period of the morning, showing similar sort of scenes. My biggest problem, of course, with this build was that I didn't have enough Lego to really go and do the base of it. So I decided to go with the material that I've gone and used to give that feel of like wide open spaces. Like most of the artwork shows it in a fairly open area with some icebergs in the background. So I was trying to just recreate that sort of simplistic sort of look to it, but also made it easier for setting up. And I've talked to a couple of other Titanic fans this weekend. I've had a lot of young kids coming up who actually knew what they were looking at, which was a surprise for once. And then of course we've got trying to make sure that there were a right number of lifeboats for the time which I was setting it in, because this is about 10 to 4 in the morning, so not all the 12 lifeboats or so that were supposedly found were there at the time. So, yeah, keeping it busy. Yeah.
So then for the build itself, take us through maybe some of the details you incorporated there and some of your favorite pieces you were able to use to capture the details.
Yeah, well, 90% of the ship is pretty well standard parts, but one of the more unusual things that I wound up, and my wife's been having a lot of fun with this, is the davits are actually dinosaur tails. Oh, yeah. So she's referring to them as the dino davits. Most of the liner is pretty well standard parts. I was lucky enough to have about 1,000 of the little 3 by white lightsaber pieces to be able to do a lot of the smaller detailed struts and that. Because I was doing the ship with different techniques that I don't normally do, a lot of the decking is like sideways, so that you've got a lot of jumper plates and that holding all the little winches and davits all together. And because the ship's been built into several sections and that, it made it very easy to actually go and move it about. I've made the mistake in the past of building ships in one place and not being able to transport them anywhere without breaking tails off or noses. And of course, there were several internet purchases that needed to get done in order to complete it, because even though my wife and I have a fairly large collection, we've been collecting for about 20 years now, we don't have children. We come and annoy other people's children. Most of the stuff has come from other collections. I did actually go around and nick several of the curved pieces from a couple of the modulars. Okay. Yeah, so...
a little parts grabbing here and there?
Yeah, I've done that on several of my builds. Yes, I think Assembly Square is missing a couple of awnings, and I think the Parisian Cafe is missing something, and I'm fairly sure there's something was missing from the cinema, from the Palace Cinema. But on the whole, I mean, most of the stuff's pretty well. I spent a lot of time just looking at photos and trying to make a guess, because I don't normally build in this scale. Most of the scale ships that I've done in the past have all been minifig scale. So to do one this small, trying to represent the crew, and that my wife's referred to them as the little salt and pepper shakers, because they look like the Lego salt and pepper shakers that are about. And I mean, most of it's fairly straightforward. I've used skateboard wheels for parts of the winches. There's a few chains and things, and we nicked the nameplate we got from one of the Lego stationery books and that, with all the letters, and but like I said, most of the build is pretty well standard. Though we did wind up spending about 2 hours trying to find one of the brown buckets. We got dozens of them. You think we could find them? It's always.
This is why you organize your collection.
We tried to do that, but I've been asked about how our collection is organised, and I said, imagine being in the hold of a freighter that's going to the bottom of the sea after being torpedoed. The likelihood of you finding anything is zero.
Well, it's a wonderful build here. I think you captured a really great part of history with this build, so it's a way to keep it alive and keep people interested in knowing what's going on. So I'm so glad you were able to bring it out to the show. Thank you.
Thank you very much.